مساء الخير جميعا. حبيت بس أنوه أن راح نبدأ خلال 5 دقائق بإذن الله. سمعنا فيه شوية زحمة فننتظر بعض الأشخاص، ف5 دقائق بإذن الله وبنبدأ. Good evening everyone. I just would like to announce that we will start in 5 minutes. We've heard there is bad traffic, so we will just wait for 5 minutes and then we will start, inshallah. شوية يحسها قوية نخففها. يقول حتى صار قوية نخففها شوية.
أي شوية أحسن. There we go. It works.
I first thought of coming by the Al-Mawj route, but then that place normally gets a traffic jam in the evening, so I thought I'm too smart.
Your mic is on. They can hear you.
Oh, all right.
مساء الخير جميعا. حضورنا الكريم، اسمحوا لي فقط أنوه بأن راح ألقي الكلمة الترحيبية بداية باللغة العربية، بعدين اسمحوا لي بالمختصر أيضا أرحب في الحضور باللغة الإنجليزية. Good evening everyone. I will be delivering the opening remarks in Arabic first, but then I'll be delivering the same opening remarks in English. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. حضورنا الكريم، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسعدنا الترحيب بكم اليوم في أولى أمسياتنا لهذا العام ضمن مبادرتنا السنوية الأمسيات الاقتصادية. في هذا العام الأمسيات الاقتصادية في نسختها 8 اخترنا أن تكون تحت شعار معا نحقق النمو، لتعكس الهدف من المبادرة من خلال 4 جلسات حوارية تركز على: الأولى الصادرات والثورة الصناعية الرابعة، الثانية جذب الاستثمار والمواهب، الثالثة بيئة العمل المستقبلية، والأمسية الرابعة مستقبل ريادة الأعمال. لقد حرصنا خلال هذا العام على توجيه مواضيع المبادرة بحيث تدعم التوجهات المستقبلية، والتي هي في الأساس توجهات عالمية تتسارع إليها العديد من دول العالم. اليوم نسلط الضوء على أحد أهم المواضيع ذات الاهتمام العالمي في سبيل تحقيق تنافسية اقتصادية عالية تساهم في رفع المستوى الاقتصادي والمعيشي وتصب في مصلحة تحقيق العديد من الأهداف، وتجمع مواضيع اليوم ما بين الحوسبة، الذكاء الاصطناعي، النظم الآلية، بالإضافة إلى إحداث التغييرات الإيجابية، وكيف يمكن للمصدر العماني اليوم الاستفادة من إمكانيات هذه الثورة في مواجهة التحديات المتعلقة بالإنتاج، خفض التكاليف، والنجاح في استقطاب أسواق جديدة. نتعرف اليوم معكم على أهمية هذا التوجه، وكيف يمكن من خلال الاستعانة بالتكنولوجيا الحديثة إيجاد صناعات ذات معايير عالية قادرة على دعم أهداف النمو الاقتصادي وتساهم في تنمية الصادرات العمانية غير النفطية. يدير جلسة اليوم صاحب السمو السيد الدكتور أدهم آل سعيد، ويشاركه كمتحدثين كل من غوبلان وهو الرئيس التنفيذي لشركة ريم للبطاريات ومعدات الطاقة، الدكتور عبد الله المحروقي الرئيس التنفيذي لمركز الابتكار الصناعي، الدكتورة نادية السعدي المديرة التنفيذية لمركز عمان للموارد الوراثية الحيوانية والنباتية، وهلال البوسعيدي الرئيس التنفيذي للشركة الخليجية للطاقة. إذن ما هي الفرص اللي ستحدثها هذه الثورة وما هي تحدياتها؟ كل ذلك سنتركه للمتحدثين بإذن الله، متمنين للجميع الاستفادة. ولكن قبل أن أنتقل إلى الكلمة باللغة الإنجليزية رجاء اسمحوا لي أنوه بضرورة ضبط أجهزتكم الهاتفية على وضع الصامت لو سمحتم. إذا كنتم تتفاعلون معنا على شبكات التواصل الاجتماعي يمكنكم استخدام الوسم الأمسيات الاقتصادية، وسيكون المجال مفتوح أثناء الجلسة لتلقي الأسئلة، فقط عرفوا بأنفسكم والمؤسسة اللي تمثلونها لو سمحتم. Your Highness, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming along this evening and welcome to a new season of the Inside Stories. We are running 4 sessions this year: Exports in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, Attracting Investment and Talent, The Workplace of the Future, and the Future of Entrepreneurship. Themes relevant to Oman's growing and ambitious economy. In fact, everyone should have received an Inside Stories brochure when you came this evening. Tonight's discussion is being streamed live on our Twitter feed, so wherever you're watching in the world, thanks for tuning in and a very warm welcome to you. We have a great panel of speakers lined up for you this evening, and they are His Highness Sayyid Dr. Adham Al Saeed, Associate Professor at Sultan Qaboos University and founder and CEO of the firm, Dr. Abdullah Al Mahrouqi, CEO, the Industrial Innovation Center, Dr. Nadia Al Saadi, Executive Director, Oman Animal Plant and Genetic Resources Center, Mr. Hilal Al Busaidi, the CEO of Gulf Energy, and Mr. Gopalan, the CEO of Ream Batteries. But before we begin, I'd like to remind you of our house rules. First, we would be grateful if you would switch your phones to silent, please. If you're tweeting tonight, please use the hashtag #InsideStories. We encourage audience participation, so if you want to ask a question, please raise your hand so the moderator can see you. Ladies and gentlemen, the global economy is on the cusp of a 4th industrial revolution, defined by technological trends that will be fundamentally change Oman's manufacturing sector and our ability to boost non-oil exports. The future of Omani manufacturing depends on how well our industry leaders play the new cards in the deck: robotics, data, automation, and 3D printing, without overlooking the value of human capital. There is certainly no clear roadmap through the 4th industrial revolution. But when you think about Industry 4.0 in broad manufacturing terms, the people who power it can make or break this opportunity. Without further ado, I'll hand over to His Highness. Thank you.
Shukran, Lokht Sajda, for that introduction. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. في البداية أحب أن نرحب بالجميع ونشكركم لتواجدكم معنا في الجلسات أو الجلسة الأولى من جلسات وأمسيات اقتصادية من تنظيم إثراء. كذلك أشكر الإخوة القائمين على الأمسيات الاقتصادية في إثراء، وكذلك في منحنا الفرصة للتفاعل معكم الإخوة والأخوات من القطاع الخاص والمؤسسات الممكنة، وكذلك من رواد الأعمال والطلبة والطالبات من خلال هذه المنصة المميزة كما ذكرت الأخت ساجدة. إذا تسمحوا لي بنتقل إلى اللغة الإنجليزية. هنالك ترجمة فورية كذلك لمن يحب يطلب من الإخوة والأخوات في إثراء، كذلك هي موجودة. وكذلك نستقبل الأسئلة بعد كل فترة وفترة، سنفتح الباب للأسئلة والتذكير فقط بالتعريف بأنفسكم واسمكم، كذلك والمؤسسة التي تمثلونها. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you tonight to the first of 4 Inside Story evenings organized by ITHRA. It gives me great pleasure to be with you tonight and with the distinguished panelists as well. We hope tonight's session will be one of engaging your thoughts, engaging and encouraging innovative and imagination as well. Today is not a day to find solutions as much as to ask, what do we do about the future and how do we see the future? Through our discussion with our panelists, we hope to gain from their experience as well as yours tonight. So please be as open-minded as possible, and as well ask the question, how does whatever the panelists talk about affect my industry, my career, and what can I do differently after tonight, inshallah ta'ala. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you again. We thank you very much for joining us. And I think one of the most important starting points to any discussion about the fourth industrial revolution is perhaps to have your thoughts individually on what does the fourth industrial revolution mean to you, starting with you, Engineer Hilal.
Thank you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, I would like to thank ITHRA for this invitation. Today, when we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, is touching all aspects of our lives. The way how we communicate with each other, when we travel, when we work in day-to-day, and even it goes into food and into every single aspect of our lives. It is something that is transforming our living, the way the wheel in the old days has done. And it is going to be continuous. The only difference between the past and what we are living is now is the time. At the past, the human brain was limited with its capability in going forward. Today we are using artificial intelligence and computers that it can think and can process almost 1,600 times what a human brain can do. Although these computers have been invented by humans, but they can do things much faster. So the pace of transformation is, how we can describe it, sonic. It's a sonic speed. So, and you could see how the telecom have evolved. You can see how the automation has evolved. You can see even in terms of medicine, in terms of genetic, everything has transformed, so, and in a very short time. So it's something that you cannot avoid it. You need to adapt it, and you need to adapt it as soon as possible. Otherwise, you will be left behind.
Absolutely. Dr. Nadia, Hilal had mentioned genetics, and we understand that in your center, which is associated with TRC, you deal with animal and plant genetics. How does the fourth industrial revolution generally in the global trends affect that, or do you not see that as a direct impact of whatever Hilal had just mentioned?
Yeah, definitely. What Hilal just mentioned really touches upon the genetic resources that we have in the world. And I think what I see from the Industrial Revolution, you're talking about technology and, as he mentioned, speed. If you look at the fact of the human genome, it took a decade to sequence the human genome and took billions of dollars. We can do that in a few hours. You can sequence the genome, identify a species, and really be able to capture or use that information that you gather from these resources. So a fourth industrial revolution and other industrial revolutions are definitely leading to the economic development. But on the contrary, we need to make sure that it's a sustainable development. It's not affecting the environment and the society, because when you look at sustainable development, you're talking about economics, society, and the environment. From the perspective of genetics and biodiversity, you can see that the fourth industrial revolution has a huge potential, but it also all the industrial revolutions have contributed to some of the problems and challenges we're facing in the world today. I think the world realized that, and that's where the Sustainable Development Goals were established. All 192 countries came along and decided that we now need to take into consideration the environment, meaning that we need to make sure that the resources we're going to use for the fourth industrial revolution or the technologies do not impact on the environment or the resources that we would apply in the industry. So there needs to be a balance. For us, it's an opportunity. We have speed of information, speed of data. As scientists, it's an opportunity. We should be riding on this speed train to gather data, so to get data information quickly and be able to really advise the industry on potential resources that they can use. I mean, for example, if I say wheat, I should be able to identify this wheat variety is good for bread and this is good for pasta. That's the speed of information we need to be able to provide to the manufacturer.
You're making us think of dinner earlier.
Sorry.
Gopal, you come from industry and manufacturing, which is core into our discussion today. Thinking very sort of broadly, what does the fourth industrial revolution mean to your sector generally across the world and the globe? How is it, do you think, interpreted?
I think the impact is already being felt slowly in the manufacturing sector. Traditionally, up to the third industrial revolution, manufacturing started migrating towards low labor cost areas. And with the world trade being more and more open, there was a clear differentiation between locations which would take up manufacturing, and the consuming regions were different from the producing regions. But I think that distinction is going to disappear with the fourth industrial revolution, because with technology, with artificial intelligence, with massive data analysis technologies available now, every aspect of manufacturing and international trade is changing. In fact, one of the recent studies done by World Bank shows that less than 18% of world trade today is taking place because of labor cost arbitrage. That means labor cost is not going to be important any longer in future. Now, every aspect in the manufacturing sector is going to undergo changes, not only in terms of methods of manufacturing, even the methods of distribution, the method of marketing, everything is going to change. And I think for a country like Oman, which is relatively young in the industrial sector, it provides a tremendous opportunity to be an early adopter. We could leapfrog other countries which have too entrenched in the old style of manufacturing.
And we'll come to that later on, inshallah, to talk more specifically about Oman. Yeah. I want to turn to you, Dr. Abdullah, because you're obviously at the head of the Industrial Innovation Center, and you work a lot, very closely to some of these technologies and developments. How do you see the fourth industrial revolution generally, and what does it mean from your perspective?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. I think we always want to say about industrial revolutions, it always goes back to our heads. What was happening from the first one to the second one to the third one, reaching all the way to the fourth one. We realized that the very first industrial revolution, it happened, it progressed, it had a lot of impact, but again now, it may have been aligned with mind's perceptions, and it might have gone against a lot of mind perceptions that we projected and expected. There is so much attention is given now to the fourth one, because the impact will be far more magnificent, far more huge. And the impact will not be confined within industry, but overall it will affect all our lives. What we see in the Industrial Innovation Center, we are looking at it from two dimensions. What is happening at a global level, and what is happening at national level. So now, basically, at global level, people start to talk about industrial, the fourth one, almost 20 years ago. In reality, in Oman, we start to touch base on this about 1 year now, the general talk and public talks. So in reality now, we see a huge change in the national policies and global policies that start to take place 20 years ago. We are starting very late. So now we are behind by 20 years. What is important now is that when we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, it is always important to think about the different tools related to the fourth industrial revolution, talking about the big data, talking about the automation, innovation, research, the other tools of efficiency, competitiveness. Now all those different tools becoming more and more important. And I think what is also very important for us is to see how different sectors in Oman will evolve as they are impacted by the fourth industrial revolution. So this is the more generic way we look at it.
Right. And Hilal, I'll come back to you again. We're talking about impact, but often we always talk about what we see or we read about elsewhere. In your industry, not specifically Oman, but globally, is the fourth industrial revolution making a difference in energy?
Let me put it this way. I've read an article at some point of time, the energy will be free of charge. And are we close to this fact? Is there anything, any indications that today the energy will be dirt cheap? I will correlate that with the telecom. Today, if you are living in India, you will be able to do all your voice call free of charge. As far as you are linked to the data and you do these downloads, because startup companies making the money from the data rather than the voice. Now, when we come to the energy sector, there is many. First of all, the demand because of the fourth industrial revolution will increase. Today, we have continents yet to be developed. We talk about Africa. It's not developed. They need roads. They need huge things. They need commodities. They need so the energy required to get Africa where today Shanghai is will require lots of energy. So this energy it can come in different forms, whether the hydrocarbon or it is a renewable energy or something that we never heard of like cold fusion. Now, when you come to cold fusion, I mean that's an endless energy source that will continue supplying for ages. At almost the resource of that is hydrogen atoms, which is plenty of it in water. So how we expect the energy will transform in the next generation to be, it's very difficult to predict. And that is the myth about the fourth industrial revolution. I will correlate that to one simple company, which is a startup in the US. It's called the relativity space. And the relativity space, they have managed to, through their Stargate 3D printing, which is a robotic printing machine, to reduce the components needed to build a full, complete rocket to be sent to the space from 100,000 component to 1,000 component. Wow. And today they are talking about delivery of 60 days compared to 4 years. And comparing of $11,000 per kg to send 120 kilometers from here compared to what today is millions of dollars.
Correct.
So that's why I say we cannot really predict. There is many initiatives worldwide, many startups. What's holding us back, I think we could jump, but what holding us back is what you call the third industry revolution leaders.
Right.
I mean, we saw how Tesla came out in terms of energy saving and everything. Why today we are hearing that Ford is putting another $4 billion of another facility in I don't know, in Michigan or in Chicago. So you can say that there is certain aspect of will take off, the certain aspect will hold, but it depends how the industry will revolve.
Thank you for that, Ilan. Dr. Nadia, I would like to talk more specifically about impact. I liked what you've mentioned about the Human Genome Project, it's effectively a scientific miracle happening that now you could do 10 years work in a few hours. But where do we see this going in terms of how is this technology an improvement in all sorts of things? Are we going to see IoT medication coming through? Are doctors going to be able to monitor me from a distance without having any invasive processes? Are these impacts realistic, or is it still sci-fi and we need another decade, or it's unpredictable at the moment?
Okay. Yeah, with regards to talking from the medical point of view, I don't think I'm in a position to touch upon the medical side, but I think you can really relate it to animals, you can relate it to plants. And I think the impact of this in fourth industrial revolution can be seen, first of all, in terms of dealing with the environment. If you're looking at biodiversity, we're losing biodiversity at an alarming rate. Now the data that could be gathered, and sometimes this is real-time data. I mean, when you talk in Oman, a few years ago, we were not talking about drones. Now we're using drones in the field to capture data, to find out what is happening to our vegetation, our animals. We are attaching equipment to animals to monitor where they're going. So all this information is providing us with information, and for policymakers as well, to be able to make decisions that will avoid this loss of biodiversity or effect on the environment. So in that aspect, it's really impacting at that level. But on the other side also, we are learning more about the resources that we have and the potential of these resources. I mean, in the global world, you could see that sometimes mushrooms are being used for furniture. Who would think mushroom could be used for furniture? So the ability to be able to capture information about these resources at the genetic level and know the differences between different resources, and those could be new potential markets could be generated from those. So it's an opportunity for us as scientists, really, and also to solve problems that are related to biodiversity loss and the environment. So that's where the impact actually is. I mean, a few years ago, most of our data, our analysis used to be done abroad. But now you see that here in Oman, the technology is being adapted. We are doing a lot of the work also here and benefiting
I'll come back and talk about that particular point as well, as we want to talk more about Oman later. Gopal, again, you said there is impact, industry is moving towards the usage of, but are they really using big data and all of the 4IR, catchy phrases, or is it simply business as usual? Perhaps automation is doing the job, third industrial revolution, robotics are good enough for us. Are we moving to knowledge-based products and manufacturing? Are we still sort of globally, that is, of course?
No, yeah. You see, fundamentally, one impact that is taking place already is the sheer size of manufacturing units. I mean, there used to be a time when you used to say small is beautiful. Small is no longer beautiful as far as manufacturing sector is concerned. Simply because the cost of investments in technology is so huge that if you do not have scale of manufacturing, you cannot justify that. And that's already taking place across many industries, where consolidation is taking place. If you see, mergers and acquisition activities are growing. And one of the reasons is companies like to consolidate, they're specialized in certain areas so that they get the advantage of the size. Now, typically we used to always say SMEs are important because SMEs generate employment and so on and so forth. But I think what is happening in the manufacturing sector is now, SMEs as independent manufacturers is no longer feasible. It's simply because today the sheer scale and technology can bring down the cost of production. I remember I was walking through a battery manufacturing facility in Korea, which was 10 times our size. And I couldn't find people anywhere. I mean, the Korean labor is very expensive, far more expensive than Omani labor. But yet, so one would normally expect, in fact, I remember when they used to sell at dirt cheap prices, we used to wonder maybe because how are they able to do it in spite of such high cost of labor? Because they just don't have labor. It's all technology. So whether you like it or not, that's the way manufacturing is moving. It's high quality at low price. Consumer demand is now very clear. No longer is the old adage that low price means cheap, low quality, high price means high quality. That's no longer true. Today you get the best quality at the lowest prices. And it's all an impact of technology. And when we talk of technology, it is just not manufacturing process alone, but every aspect of it, in terms of automation, in terms of robotics, in terms of data analysis for better quality control. I mean, today, most machines are PILC control. There are PILCs.
PILC being?
Programmable integrated logic controllers. Every machine has got this. Now, we are able to link these PILCs, collect the data together, and analyze. So you no longer need human inspection at various places. So there are a lot of changes that is taking place. So definitely one impact is the size of the industry is growing. And that's something which we need to seriously look at from Oman's future manufacturing strategy point of view.
All right. Thanks for that, Gopal. Dr. Abdullah, we've talked about different impacts, but something interesting Gopal had picked on was processes and using data to improve. Are these trends evident across the world, or is it very specific in manufacturing and some of the sort of projects that you have been working on? Do you see this as something of a trend, manufacturing going towards capital intensive and then along with all the periphery processes as well? Or is it purely about the manufacturing process and pushing out those products?
I think I'll touch base on two things now. What Engineer had mentioned about the impact on environmental impact related to, for example, industry. At the same time, what Gobel has started with is the process change. If you talk about industry now, industry is contributing to more than 15% of the national, the global GDP. It is consuming more than 50% of the energy. And accordingly now, it becomes also a major contributor in job generation. So now there is a lot of fear that a lot of jobs will be lost according to the new impact of the fourth industrial revolution. To be honest with you, if we look at what is happening in the processes, now with every single industrial revolution, there is a lot of change, there is a lot of improvement, and it will never go back. But at the same time now, we don't see a cut down in human resources utilized. There is always an improved in employment. The change will be from low grade and lower jobs into more competitive, better jobs, better paid jobs. And this is the kind of shift we are very likely to see. If you talk about the proper automation, for example, a very interesting example I was reading about today in initiative by Cambridge, they are talking about how can we use artificial intelligence to monitor what's happening of environmental impacts. Now you're talking about environmental impact. It can be images, it can be data, it can be policies, etc., etc. Now with all these huge billions and billions amount of data, we used to monitor it using statistical packages. Now we are no longer able to do that. And honestly, we will not be able to make a policy making and make decisions in proportional to what is happening without using artificial intelligence. So now the very interesting thing with Cambridge, they're saying, we are going to use artificial intelligence, and they're launching a very interesting initiative. You're talking about now all this data can be automatically analyzed on real-time basis, and then it will help you making immediate decisions on how to manage and how to tackle environmental impacts. You're talking about impacts in land, impacts at the sea level, impact at air level. You're talking about hundreds and hundreds of different pollutants emitted into our air. And of course, now there's no way we can manage as human beings what is happening at this mega speed level. So now the process is very likely to change. The kind of automation related to industries is very likely to change. We started already to see a very interesting trends from some manufacturers to start adopting new technologies. And we are already introducing some new technologies in some of our manufacturing sectors, especially in marble and fisheries. Those two sectors we paid quite a lot of attention to over the last 1 year.
Right, and I want to hear more about that. I'm sure everyone would as well. Let's talk about myths, as you've introduced the first one, that the fourth industrial revolution, as many of the ones before it, do destroy jobs but create jobs. But what we keep hearing, especially from the World Economic Forum, that some of the more, we all will be replaced at some point here. You'll have an AI moderator, you'll have an AI engineer, a scientist, a CEO, and a head of a research center. That kind of makes everyone a bit worried that what are we going to do? Is this something, and this is open to all of you, is this something that is on your mind as you look through these technologies, adoption of these technologies and some of the challenges? Or is this something you see, we're going to live through this and we're going to be creative and just circumvent the worst of it?
I will tap to what Dr. Abdullah said. New technology, it's unlocking new opportunities. And the human being is very, very creative in finding new ways to unlock opportunities. Yet there is a lot to be mined. I mean, we are talking about whether it's minerals or it's natural resources. From water today, we are taking hydrogen, and we're talking about hydrogen cell as a source of energy and all of that. So let me take this as an example. Today, the biggest challenge to develop Africa is the infrastructure. They don't have roads. And today, to take fuel from the port of Kenya to Central Africa, either you need to have a train or you need to have a blacktop roads and an army of vehicles in order to improve that. But today, Central Africa can generate power through solar. So you don't have to have that fuel for that development. You don't have to have that infrastructure and solving political matters. You know, today, Rwanda, which doesn't have a port in Africa, in the shore, it is the most developed country in Africa with a very good GDP. Actually, it is leading it becomes a role model for emerging markets. And they're not in the sea. So how they generate power, how they establish so they have managed to generate, it's just a human being capability of unlocking opportunities. Once the environment and the political system and whatever, or this initiative has been taken with the right policies and the right mindset. So I don't see the business model to get the fourth industrial revolution to change our world will have the same obstacles that's used to have. And this is all because of this new technology. Absolutely. We're talking about drones to deliver medicine, to deliver all of that, Today, we are expecting the whole world going to change. And add to that, the people today are migrating quite a lot, exchanging this information and adopting a new system. So I'm expecting that there is a huge amount of opportunity going to unlock. And it doesn't necessarily now we think to that only in our planet, possibly in other planets. Yeah. Especially with relative to space, when today they say it's going to cost you, I'm a 70 kg, 90 kg, and this will cost me $200,000 to go to the space. Okay, this is today. Imagine when the Samsung TV was a 500 real, and it is 12-inch in the 1980, and today you can buy them in the Black Friday for almost 50 real or 100 real with the 56-inch TV, flat screen, and all of that. So there is no limits. As I say, it's not unpredictable how the transformation will be. It's so fast that we cannot sometimes comprehend it.
Absolutely. Gopal, I want to raise the same issue with you. Is it a do or die situation in manufacturing that every company in manufacturing has to adopt all of these technologies, or different industries have different needs out of these technologies?
Naturally, it will be industry dependent. It won't affect all the industries at the same time, but ultimately, it will affect everyone. And one of the points that Dr. Abdullah mentioned and you were raising is about job creation and job destruction. And I agree entirely with him in the sense there will not be any net impact on the jobs, but just that we have to develop new skill sets, new kind of jobs. And I think what's going to happen is the unskilled kind of jobs are going to disappear. And you've got to get more and more skilled jobs, which is what will be the need of the day, which means we as a country, we have to relook at our educational system. And one of the things I also always wonder is, in Oman, we have far more management graduates coming out than skilled technicians coming out. So this is going to be a technology-driven world, which means you need technological skills at all levels. Again, as I was mentioning, industry will consolidate and grow bigger, but that also throws up opportunities for ancillaries. So those SMEs, instead of becoming independent manufacturers, will become ancillaries to the larger manufacturing units.
So they'll integrate.
So they could bring skill sets which are needed in common across larger industries. So some degree of partnership will build in, and as a whole, everybody will thrive. I think that's the direction in which industry will move.
Thanks. I'd like to open the floor to the audience. If there are any questions you'd like to ask any of the panelists, this would be a good opportunity. Please just raise your hand, and I believe we have a mic somewhere. So we'll start here on the left. Identify yourself by name and organization, please. And if the question is specific to, just let me note, we are going to move to our Oman discussion. So if you have an eager question, just hold on to it if it's about Oman. Tafadhali.
So if it's about Oman, I should wait?
If you don't mind, that's what we're going to talk about next. الضوء في عيننا شوية فما نشوف اللي رافع يده أو رافع يدها. So, yeah, تفضلي.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
صفاء خضر من Gate 10 for Marketing. I just want to ask for fourth industrial revolution. We are in the stage that human minds are competing with the AI, because it's been years since you are seeing movies that humans' minds are competing the AI. So the fourth industrial revolution, we are in this stage that human minds competing the AI. So basically human minds creating the AI. So are we in dangerous or not yet? And I would like to know if how the fourth industrial revolution we're gonna impact the marketing and advertising agencies, and how we're gonna do about it. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Any other questions? هنا لو سمحت في الأمام. الخط الثاني على اليمين.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum
My name is
assalam.
Saeed Saadi from Destination Sustainability. I know that my question may be like nonsense, but it's for all of you. Can you predict when the IoT will conquer the world? Like, can you give me like an predicted exactly? It will be like 2020 or 2040 or something like that. That's it.
Thank you, Said. في الخلف.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام.
سهيل موسى إسماعيل ميمون.
Louder, please. I can't hear you. Hey, شغال.
Okay, it's not basically a question, it's an observation. We're looking, for instance, in the current times at automobiles, which will be navigated through our streets without a driver. It's an example of where technology is cannibalizing on human labor. It may be inevitable, but is it significant? Is it advantageous to society? We in Oman, we also have a dual-pronged issue. It's not just prosperity and technology that's important to us, but also how our society, how is it going to change our society? Are we ready for those technological advances?
The point is clear, just to save time. So I'll cut you off there and I'll allow someone else to.
Okay, thank you.
But the point is made,
Right.
technology and societal
So it's
changes.
addressed to anybody in the panel.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks. في الخلف عندنا الأخت هناك. Two questions, right? So I'll take one and then the last question وبننتقل للمحور الثاني إن شاء الله. تفضلي يا أختي.
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام.
اسمي إيمان الزجالي. My name is Iman Zijali. Okay, I like the topic you was speaking about the skill that is needed in the market nowadays, since many of jobs are no more will be needed in the future. So how we can know the demand of the market to fulfill the need of the market and to employ the number of graduates that we have today?
All right. Thank
That's
you.
my question.
Thank you, Iman. All right, one last question أظن في الخلف لو سمحتوا.
Assalamu alaikum. Halima al-Busaidi from Times of Oman. I have a question regarding climate change. As we become more economically aware. Embarking on such industrial revolution, will it impact it? Will it be worse or will it be better? I know you discussed it a little more, but I'm hoping you could talk a little bit more about the effect on the climate.
All right, thank you very much, Halima. So I'll repeat some of the questions, and then I'll ask each one of you to pick your favorite and probably address that. So we've had questions on whether the human mind is competing with AI. Have we lost that race already, or we've still got a chance? There's also this is a brave question, when do we predict the Internet of Things to take over, where all the devices across the world are connected? Is that in the foreseeable future or not? We also had an issue with automation of cars and how generally the technology impacts society. And what are the skills required generally, as mentioned earlier, and how do we prepare graduates of the future and even the very near future? And finally, the climate impact. So please choose whichever you want and run with it. So how about we start with you, Dr. Nadia?
Okay. I'll touch a little bit upon the climate impact and how the Industrial Revolution is affecting that. As mentioned earlier, Dr. Abdullah mentioned that several industrial revolutions have evolved and have produced a lot of economic advancement, but on the contrary have affected and caused impact on the climate as well. So the fourth industrial revolution is an opportunity. Definitely industrialization is putting an impact and raising climate change. The processes we're using, the carbon emissions that we are introducing into the air is affecting climate change. Our oceans are being affected, our biodiversity is being depleted. But the fourth industrial revolution is an opportunity to be able to monitor where we could not monitor, and also at real time, being able to monitor and see what changes in policy, what changes in processes, what changes in our manufacturing procedures could help us sort of try to mitigate climate change. So it's a wonderful opportunity in that it deals with data and gives us the opportunity to analyze and predict what could happen in the future and how we can mitigate that. So I see it in a positive light, but I'm also seeing it that fourth industrial revolution and all industrial revolutions are contributing to some of these challenges that we are facing.
Thanks, Dr. Hilal.
Let me pick, because she has some question which is related to her day-to-day work. Marketing today is, can we call it smart marketing when you have an ad in the newspaper? This ad will be seen by everybody, whether that is relevant to him or not relevant. Now, when we deploy an AI, and when we deploy the big data, then we can do selective marketing. So your SMS, if you want to send a message, it will go only to relevant people who maybe not only will only think about it, but also buy it. So that kind of data, today, a lot of people go to pharmacies, they pick medicines. So you should know that Hilal is taking that type of medicine and Saeed is taking that type of medicine from very simple. So if I want to send a new version of that medicine, so only I will send to that specific people who are using that specific brands or whatever. So there is a huge, actually, we are way back here in Oman. In fact, I mean, in many parts of the world right now, it's very personalized marketing. This is one aspect. The other aspect is, in old days, or even to the very recent past, when change comes, it's adopted by everybody. This is not actually happening, especially with regard to IoT. Today, you can have a neighbor who is still having switches in his house, and he go room by room to make sure that's all off at night. And you have another neighbor sitting just next to him. He will go to sleep and say, sleeping time, and the light goes off immediately. Mm-hmm. So it goes from B2B to B2C. When we received electricity in our house, it was available for everybody. The whole town will have it in the same month. Okay, because the government decided to supply power. But today, to adopt IoT, it is B2C. It's become business to customer. So the C, it can be anybody. That's why a live example of that, You go to New York, you have Manhattan, where everybody is high-tech, and you have Harlem Street, where everybody is like backward, still people living in very ordinary life. So it becomes like a personal choice, and the personal, whether it's capable of doing it, or can afford it, or cannot afford it.
Sure.
So all of this can happen. So that's creating a bit mess. Some of the IoT will be generic, which is coming at a country level or whatever. Actually, we are involved in one of the project, IoT project, which is today, very soon, Muscat will be transferred into digital meters in water and power. And that will go through LoRa using gateways, and there will be a platform, and then you will have an app where you just, by click of a button, you can pay your bill. So you don't have to, there is nobody will be reading your meter. You cannot dispute the meter reading. You cannot do all of that. So, and possibly it will be linked to your bank account, so even you maybe will not have a choice whether you want to pay it or not. So I don't know if it's good or bad, but for some people.
So the answer to your question is 2019.
So it's gonna, I think there is some aspect which is like a nation-driven projects that will, everybody will have an access to it. But some other IoT will be very much a customer choice or a person choice to adopt.
I would like to focus on the kind of skills that are required. And I think to understand this better, let's look at any manufacturing organization or any commercial organization in three different areas. One is you have to produce some goods or services. Then you have to market those services. And finally, you have to reach those products to the end consumer. Now, with the fourth industrial revolution, the skill sets required in all these three areas are changing. When you are talking of manufacturing, any technology deployment has two kinds of people required. One who knows how to use the technology, and one who knows how to maintain the technology. So you need to create, I mean, in very simple terms, if you're talking of technology as electronics or AI and things like that, you need to have hardware engineers, you need to have software engineers, and both these lines will grow in a big way. Now, if you're talking of selling and marketing, the conventional advertising and marketing techniques have gone. Now, as Engineer Hilal was saying, it's all focused, tailor-made. I mean, you can see all of you are using Facebook, and Facebook knows exactly what your tastes are, what your interests are, and they deliver the advertising of the concerned people directly to you. So, the new generation of marketing people will need to have skills in data analysis, in digital marketing, and so on and so forth, no longer conventional marketing. Now, the third aspect where the impact is on distribution. The old idea of going to a shop, going to a retail outlet and buying is totally disappearing with e-commerce. You have Amazon, which delivers everything at your doorstep today. Now, which means when you say Amazon delivers things at your doorstep, how does it deliver? It outsources the distribution to a logistics team. So logistics and logistic management is going to be a major area in future. And you need to develop skill sets in those areas. And in fact, interestingly, under the Tanfeed program, logistics is definitely treated as one area for future employment generation and diversification of the economy. So when you look at skill sets are required not necessarily only technology oriented, but in terms of support services as well. What definitely is true is the general business management kind of skills will not be required in future. More focused skill sets will be required, at least in terms of large generation of employment.
Thank you. Okay, I think the question is coming at different segments of what we see in overall manufacturing, for example. And let me take you through a quick visualization. Now, if you talk about any business, you're talking basically about raw material that goes into your business. You have got the process, you have got the product, and then you've got the marketing, branding, etc., and then you go all the way to export. Now, if you talk about to what extent the industrial revolution is going to impact is definitely and 100% will impact every single segment. Take a single example. If you're using paper for packaging, we are very likely now to go into reusable material, maybe composite material, something else. So that evolution only in the raw material is already going crazy. And most people cannot comprehend where are we going only with the raw material. Now, take it to the process. And here we will go back to what we talk about environmental impact. Now, the process that used to be very energy consuming, now by far it's been reduced. Now, energy efficiency, energy consumption in most factories that we have in Oman, they are utilizing energy by extra 30 to 40%. Extra, compared to what has technology gone up to now. So now we are talking about already mega and magnificent changes happening at global level. Now we have to be prepared what's going to happen in each of these segments all the way to reach export. If you talk about, just to answer your question more specifically, if you talk about marketing and branding, etc., that is already taking a completely different dimension. For example, now we are doing a very interesting project regarding Omani marble. Omani marble is all sold as Omani marble. Now, for the first time, we are thinking of using, and we are already validating, artificial intelligence to grade Omani marble. And what we see already, that Omani marble is very comparable to the best marble qualities in the world. But this was never been able to be determined or analyzed or benchmarked because we never done artificial intelligence, and we do not have these tools. Now we have those tools. So now, things will dramatically change. We are also projecting very soon. You should be able to see, to check the freshness of fish on shelf just by pressing a button. So now there's a lot of things are going to change. The way we live, the way we consume, the way we produce, the way we manufacture, a lot of things will change. But now I will also address two important aspects that will give them a better understanding of what's happening at a global level. Now, the world is so much focused on, out of about 10 different factors, most countries in the world, starting with European countries, going to US, and then China and Asia, they're starting to focus more and more, out of about 10 important factors related to the fourth industrial revolution. Most important factor they are focused on now is innovation and research. Those two parameters becoming absolutely the two most important, powerful tools to enable you to adapt and adopt the fourth industrial revolution. And then you're talking about the fund allocation. Now, fund allocation, US is going by far the highest in the world. They are almost putting 2 billion euros every year just to support the fourth industrial revolution. And then you take it all the way to Germany, which is allocating about, they have allocated about 400 million euros only in the first half of 2017. Now, out of that, you're talking about 60 million allocated for SMEs. So now, there is a very important aspect of focus on SMEs, so you allow them to catch up with the bigger factories and bigger manufacturers. So overall, there's already a lot of interesting trends that we need to capitalize on. Now, when you talk about the legal system, infrastructure, networking, exhibitions, those are becoming less and less more important now because things are changing in the world, in the overall ecosystem. What is also very important, we are very likely to see the diminishing or weaknessing of certain sectors. So now, most sectors will flourish in the next 10 to 20 years. Is 3D printing, equipment manufacturing, logistics and transportation, you're absolutely right. You're talking about textile industries, food industries, and to a lesser extent, all other manufacturing sectors we're talking about. So there is already projected trends going to take place, and everybody has to be prepared for that. Otherwise, you'll be left behind. Absolutely. And finally, what is most important is also the overall global changes. You always need to prepare you need to visualize yourself, how big you are in competing at global level. This is very important. And I'm talking here about national levels.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Abdullah.
I want just to say how the fourth industrial revolution is very important in breaking the norms. Today, we know about Holland is where we can have the best milk or best beef in Europe. But today, Holland is producing so much veggies around the year. And all of that because of the fourth industrial revolution. They adopted technology and they can produce today vegetables around the year through hydroponic. Today, even one of the largest farm being established today in Dubai, where the temperature is 50 degrees C, yet they're still able to produce tomato and all sorts of veggies in a very, very scalable production, and despite what the harsh environment around that. Actually, today your risk as a farmer with the open air is more than anything else. Today, what you call
infestation.
The bugs,
Yeah.
can eat all your crop if you are not using. Today, you can, inside an enclosed environment, you can produce without even using these chemicals, which is harmful for the body. So what was impossible a few years back, today it is very much logical. You don't need to have a fresh water, you have the sea, and you have the sun, and you can have fresh water by desalination plant. You don't have to have the sun if you have temperature controlled, automated. And all of these, you will not believe it. I mean, you put the seed and the machines take care of all the rest, controlling the temperature, humidity, pest control, all of that. It's even the nutrients, everything is controlled by AI, is controlled by machines. So all of these is, when I'm saying it's unlocking opportunities, I'm not expecting to have, in 10 years from now, there is people who are hungry. And I hope one day we'll have the tomato, you can grow it at your house at no cost.
Absolutely.
Just having pressed a button and pick the tomato every day. Today you can buy them on Amazon for luxury. There is UV light with a small thing, and you can grow whatever you want at your house.
Or get into the garden, actually, do some gardening.
Exactly.
So let me, Engineer Hilal, try and bring all of this conversation back home. Sure, because everyone here is very interested in what is really happening in Oman, and are we lagging behind this fourth industrial revolution? Let's start with energy, because energy is a very vibrant sector in Oman. How far are we from the fourth industrial revolution, or do you have any examples of what, whether Gulf Energy or your industry is doing in Oman that is well ahead of the curve when it comes to the way you produce the process?
There is many aspects to it, and there is a great initiatives actually today in Oman in terms of the energy. First of all, we could see there is the solar, and the solar power generation is started, and also there is a policy right now to buy electricity back from these. I mean, there will be houses, you can generate electricity, and you can have that to be reduced from your total bill. And that policy, I think, is going to come. I think it's came or is going to come very soon. Today, we are doing enhanced oil recovery using solar with the NRA project and Glass Point. Today, as well, we have the wind power in Dhofar. So in terms of energy, we are adapting some of the technology. But this is just an adaptation rather than generation of. And where we want to be is in the fourth industrial revolution to generate this kind of thing. To make a Mercedes in the past days, you would need a forging, you would need very specialized robots in order to make up all that beautiful 12 valve engine, and to all these little small components, all these small, today, no. If you open up, if you disassemble a Tesla vehicle, it's nothing. Motor, board, and that's it. And screen. You don't have much. Today you can manufacture cars in a small room like this. Especially, there is already a 3D printing body. So technically saying is, there will be a transformation. And there is a lot happening in Oman as well in this aspect. A lot of startups. We could see startups on burgers today and cafes and all of that, but also it's going into energy, especially like the company that awarded to install all of these digital meters, and they are bringing manufacturing of these smart readers into Oman. So there is very
So
good
diffusion of
initiatives.
technology is actually happening.
Exactly. What I feel is that is not enough to. We need to attract investors. We need to attract to make. You know, today the dynamics in the world it's moving quite fast. I mean, in old days we saw a lot of people going from the whole world to US. Now we see a lot of US going to China, going to somewhere else. So we need to know how we can attract those people in country, and to lay the foundation and to harbor their inventions here to start. Not enough that we adopt somebody else's technology. What we need is to generate this technology.
Which brings me to the point of research and development, Dr. Nadia. Is enough of that happening in Oman to support these industries? We know the enhanced recovery technology was developed in Oman, but unfortunately it wasn't patented in Oman, right? But are we doing enough? What do we need in Oman today to reach to those levels of developing our own technologies suitable for our environment and our needs as well, and the region as well, you know, not to be very specific?
Yeah, I think currently in Oman, the research is really focusing on looking at the resources that we have and understanding those resources that we have. Before I get deeper into that, I'd like to touch on the point that Engineer Hilal just mentioned about the greenhouses where tomatoes are grown, and you could have, with the flick of a button, seeds and everything takes place. As rosy as that may be, it's not a healthy situation. And I say that because it's the genetic resource. By taking something that's so homogeneous, so similar, and affected by a single disease, you've lost the whole crop. So making sure that we maintain the diversity of these resources in our country, which have adapted to our conditions, is really critical. So encouraging farmers to maintain in their farms because they adapt to the environment that they are on. So what you will see that in the future, with climate change, our resources have survived under very harsh conditions. Investors will be coming to us, and they are definitely coming to us.
And do you notice any trends happening in Oman right now in those areas, in biodiversity and the impact it might have?
Definitely. For example, when you look at the Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, they are responsible for what's happening in the wildlife. But when a center like the Genetic Resource Center is responsible for making sure that we collect these resources and keep them in gene banks. Why in gene banks? It's an insurance policy for the future. We talk about sustainable development, making sure that resources will be available for the future. We use what we need, but make sure that it's available for the future. So the gene banks serve as purpose in that we understand what the landscape is. We know where the important resources are. We don't know what the future problems will come. So to blanket that, we do the collection and keep those resources. To keep those resources, we need to keep maintaining them in the fields and growing them. And the issue about having a greenhouse of tomatoes definitely will solve the problems of food security. Population is increasing, but again, I still want to key upon that the work that is being done now is looking at these different resources and the diversity within. The richness of our resources is the diversity that exists in them. If I just give you an example, if all of us had the same genetic makeup and we were affected by one virus, all of us are gone. What keeps us, people who can survive a certain disease and others are not able to survive a disease, are susceptible to a disease, is the diversity of genetic information we have within us. So it's really critical that we work on that. And that's where our research is focusing on.
So is the research harnessing the power of the fourth industrial revolution, the tools available to us? We're talking about blockchain and maintaining the integrity of the research that is done. Is that something that is happening, or we're still falling behind in
Yeah, in some institutions, the research is really moving forward, and you'll be amazed that, I cannot talk about some of those projects because they still need to be patented, as you said. We develop technology and we don't patent. We have this naiveness in us to think that sharing knowledge is good, and it is good for science, for scientific purposes. But if you're going to look at the economic aspect of that, we sometimes have to be careful in what information we give out. And what you see, the trend now is that I don't look at frankincense as a resin. I look at frankincense as the molecules in the frankincense. What molecule could be used for pharmaceutical? What molecules would be useful for example, if I'm talking about cancer research? So what you see that the research scientific community now has evolved also. We're not looking at just basic science, we're looking at the commercial aspect of that. And I think this came naturally because of getting the attention of financial fundings. When you talk about conservation, when you talk about climate change impact, yes, definitely it's there. When you talk economics, then people are listening to you. Absolutely. And that indirectly leads to conservation. And I think that's where the research and people are now using these technologies. I must say, you'll go to some of these universities, like University of Nizwa, and I was impressed by the technology that they're using over there. The level of research of where it has reached. I mean, you'll have to go and visit to be able to really understand what I'm trying to say. The University of the Far, they're also working on Luban, and they're working internationally. Now we're not bound to being in a lab over here. I could be working with somebody in the US. I could be sharing data. They could be analyzing my data while I'm working on data. So research is evolving. We realize we have to catch up. We realize we need to talk to industry and be able to really meet the needs of industry.
So let me take it to industry. Are we doing enough in Oman in manufacturing? Are we able to transfer that into plugging ourselves into value chains using knowledge-based exports as the world is looking more and more towards knowledge-based and less, as you've mentioned, to labor-intensive and even capital-intensive, but we're looking for knowledge. And is Oman there yet? Or are we, again, behind that wave and we're just adapting, as Engineer Hilal had said?
Honest answer is I don't believe that Omani industry has woken up to this reality yet. There are, of course, exceptions. Some of the larger manufacturers which have come up in the Sohar belt, perhaps are. But if you look at most of the manufacturing units in the old industrial estates of Lusail, Nizwa, in these Sohar and all these places, you will find that we are still very much just trying to adopt some available technologies relevant to our own industries and still pretty much dependent upon leveraging low labor cost wherever we can. And which is why one of the reasons when the government raised minimum wages, there was hue and cry, because the basic leveraging was on labor cost rather than on technology. So, and one of the reasons for this is also with the size of the units, as I was saying earlier. Manufacturing to thrive needs scale. And scale requires either a large domestic market or a basic country cost competitiveness in order to exploit the international market. Now, unfortunately, Oman being a small country doesn't have a large local market. Take an example of Saudi, for example. Saudi Arabian companies have a large local market. They don't even think in terms of exports. And the markets are protected. They don't let anybody come in so easily. Yeah. So they could afford to ignore this and continue as they are, but we cannot. Because we are open markets, we are small markets, and we have to thrive on exports. And which means we have to be internationally competitive, which means we have to change the way of working. I think companies are beginning to realize this, but I have not come across any major initiatives in terms of adopting 4th IR tools.
This brings us to you, Dr. Abdullah. What aren't we doing in Oman right now, and what is the role? You've spoken about some initiatives in quality checks, but that's only a small part of the story, and these are interesting stories, but we need something bigger. How would the Industrial Innovation Center, not alone, of course, but with all the other stakeholders, enable industry? What is the value proposition, the economic value proposition here, that we can get the manufacturing industry to work towards adopting some of the value-added technologies that we're talking about today?
I think we need to look at this thing from 2 dimensions. There are some positive things, and we can always talk about the positive things and ignore the negative ones. And to be honest with you, to be realistic, we need to capitalize on the positive aspects that we see now, but at the same time, we really need to be critical and try to fix and improve what is happening in our industries today. Being at the Industrial Innovation Center for the last almost now 2.5 years, what we see is the receptiveness for innovation, research, capitalizing on the 4th Industrial Revolution is already marginalized by more than 70% of our industries. So the very likely only 30% maybe maximum will really transform into the 4th Industrial Revolution. Now, I'm not saying this based on random or hypothetical numbers, but from the very good interactions we had with industries over the last 1 year. Now, we have been interacting very closely with the marble sector. And just imagine, you bring every single company doing marble, every single entrepreneur, every single SME, and then you put them all in one gathering. And then you try to take them through an innovation process that will transform the sector. And only 30% of those who really interact with you complement and become your partner. And we are funding it from the government. So now we have a big challenge with the mindset of industrialists to capitalize on those golden opportunities. And very much likewise, almost identical scenario we see with the fishery sector. Now we are closing the 2 projects with some very positive aspects, but also the problem now is the concern. To what extent will the industry capitalize on the governmental investment in those 2 sectors? If we look at the positive aspect, yes, we are seeing a lot of interested entrepreneurs. Was it mine? Something critical. No, okay. So we do see some interesting aspects, or young entrepreneurs are really moving into developing soft industries. And there is a lot of trends going into food manufacturing. So those are quite very interesting examples that we tend to see now more and more innovative products. Young Omanis, they go abroad, develop a product and come back. They want to establish a startup. There are some good interactions taking place or complementarities between some SMEs, especially when it comes to Internet of Things. So now there is one company, we supported them to develop a very sophisticated system for smart houses at a cost about 150,000 Oman riyals. But what is important for us now, we told them, you are so good, you're so talented, you're so advanced, and you already have all the infrastructure in place. Why don't you become the incubator of IIC in developing things related to Internet of Things? And they agreed to that one. So now, whoever comes to our center, he needs support, or he needs incubation in things related to Internet of Things, we channel them to this entity, and they're doing a very interesting job. So, this is already starting to transform now, where we see SMEs becoming incubators for the other entrepreneurs. With respect to automation also, you can see very young Omanis. They come, they develop a complete set of machinery. They develop their own factory. And now they're also starting to diversify this machinery for different applications. There are 2 machines we wanted to develop in India or China. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we found a local entrepreneur. He said, I will manufacture them for you. So now the initial validation took place in the last 2 weeks. Absolutely promising. So there are very few examples. Now, to answer your question more specific and more
because that took a long...
Yes. Are we satisfied? Do we do enough? I'm telling you, we are very much behind. First of all, the amount of money we are allocating for innovation is very small. The governance is not sufficient enough.
The governance, are we talking about the right regulation framework? Are we talking about the right support system? Because this is a multifaceted process. So what is governance here?
No, I think the governance, you're talking about the financial resources, human resources, the overall integration of the ecosystem. Now everybody's working in isolation, and this is not going to help us in long term. Now, to become more competitive, and we have been so much associated with different talks related to the weaknesses in the Global Innovation Index, Global Competitiveness Index. Now, in order for us to really progress and go in the same speed with the world, we need far more effort. We need far more resources. Now, we don't pay enough attention to transforming education in line with the 4th Industrial Revolution. We need more talented, skilled people. Who is going to do this at industrial level? We need a lot of trainings and orientation related to change the mindset of industry. I know at ASC we're trying at our level, and there are some quite interesting things happening because we are training 100 Omani individuals to become industrial innovation specialists. And those ones, we are training them and we're qualifying them and we are equipping them with some tools related to the 4th Industrial Revolution. And to be honest with you, also there are some positive aspects from those graduates.
Alhamdulillah. Thanks very much, Dr. Abdullah.
Just to close...
You're not closing yet because we're having more questions coming your way.
To close out, there is a prerequisite for to harvest the benefits for the 4th Industrial Revolution. One of these prerequisites is having the data. So digital transformation is extremely important. We can see, today everybody realizes that Royal Oman Police have adopted a lot of digital transformation. So that's why you can get all your stuff in a very short time. Once we do the digital transformation, the availability of data, you can identify, you can analyze, you can find the gaps, you can find the opportunities. Then you come to how you can approach these opportunities and what's in the best way.
And open data as well. We're not simply availability of data, but
open data.
Thanks for that. We go back to the audience as we get to the end of the session. We'll start with you, young lady. ممكن لو سمحتوا المايك عند الأخت.
السلام عليكم. نور المحروقي from Royal Opera House Muscat. My question is for Dr. Abdullah, but please feel free to jump in. I'll take your advice. I'll focus on the positive and be critical of the negative. There's been a lot of great initiatives in Oman by SMEs and different entities in participating in the fourth industrial revolution or in the progress of automation technology and all of that. One of the great examples is PACA, Public Authority of Civil Aviation, just launched last week, I think, a permit for drones. So this is a great example of a policy being up to date to society's needs. But on the opposite side, in government offices today, we are still sending paper letters from one office 100 meters away from another office. And that is how we communicate in the governments. So this is the extreme polar opposites of what's happening in Oman. On one side, there's innovation and creativity and a lot of progress. And on the other side, we're still stuck with ancient processes of sending a paper letter to another entity. So my question is, what are the policy changes necessary to activate Oman in the fourth industrial revolution? Because as you said, we're very, very far behind.
Thanks for that. طيب, any other questions? أسئلة أخرى؟ لو سمحتوا المايك عند الأخت هنا. شوف دكتور جالك السؤال صعب ترى.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
معكم فاطمة البلوشي من وزارة الخدمة المدنية. بصراحة let's shift to English. Actually
براحتك ترى عربي إنجليزي we can give Gopal شو اسمه.
أحسن أتكلم.
براحتك يعني.
شو اسمه. بصراحة أنا هدفي الأساسي من حضور الورشة من حضور الإيفنت اليوم هو إني أبى إجابة لسؤال. أنا IT عندي تيم IT لكن طبعا البيبل عندي عندهم different skill set وأنا دائما عندي هذا كل ما أقرأ عن الفورث ريفولوشن يعني في الاندستري وهذا التطور اللي احنا رايحين حقه أنا أفكر في التيم عندي وحتى في نفسي how أنا أقدر إني أطور نفسي up to that level إني أعيش في موضوع الفورث ريفولوشن وهذه الأشياء بحكم إن إحنا IT فإحنا أكثر أوير نعرف يعني شو الأشياء والتحديات الجديدة اللي موجودة في الماركت ونعرف عنها ونعرف كيف نسوي أدوبشن ونعرف how to move forward لكن أنا أتكلم من السكيل سيت حقي وحق الموظفين في التقسيم عندي كيف أقدر إني أسوي shifting المايند سيت تبعهم نفس ما ذكرت الأخت هذيك إن عندنا إلى الآن في بيبر تنتقل رسالة أو مذكرة أو whatever من قسم لقسم ومن القسم نفسه على الموظفين عندهم
واضح أختي واضح شكرا
شو اسمه أرجو الإجابة على هالسؤال
شكرا جزيلا أسئلة أخرى في الخلف عندنا
السلام عليكم.
عليكم السلام.
أحمد قطن طالب جامعة صناعة قابوس. بسأل السؤال بالعربي. السؤال ما هو تأثير الثورة الصناعية الرابعة على سوق العمل في الأعمال المهنية اللي تعتبر labor intensive التي هي حاليا مشغلة من قبل العمالة الوافدة بالأغلب والتي كانت يمكن أن تكون حل من حلول مشكلة الباحثين عن عمل حيث أن من المفترض أن الكليات أو الكليات المهنية استقبلت ودرست جمع من الكوادر الوطنية لتخفيض هذه الفجوة ما بين الأعمال الوافدة والوطنية في قطاع العمال المهنيين، والتي قد تهدد إذا ما وظفت بالعمالة الوطنية من قبل الثورة الصناعية الرابعة، والتي هي كابيتال انتنسيف. وشكرا.
شكرا أحمد، شكرا. في الخلف عندنا right at the back.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Ahmed Zubair, fresh graduate. You talked, or you mentioned a lot of problems in Oman currently, many examples. You have old ways of doing stuff. You have different government entities not working together or not integrating well with one another. What do you think the problem is? And do you think the problem in Oman is the mindset and maybe the educational system that we currently have, where we have people not thinking as innovators, but as they just go to class, learn something and try to copy and paste into the industry rather than find solutions that will work locally in Oman. So do you think, or in other words, how important is education and changing the mindset and developing Omani innovators?
Thank you, Ahmed. Thanks. And I think we have one more question. We come back to the front. There'll be an opportunity to talk to our speakers as well after the session as well, where there's a networking session, inshallah. So again, you can ask them questions. Tfaddal.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Iyad Al-Rawas. I'm a project engineer in RCA. My question is really similar to my friend over there. So the thing is, it's the technology is moving forward, but the thing is the mindsets of the people and the society. Yes, there are some people who are adapting and they're up to the trends and everything that's happening with technology, but there's still some people who are not aware, and they don't know about the fast-paced the technology advancements. So how do we make sure that these people are also coping and the speed of the technology advancements, so that they're not left behind and that the society or the economy will not suffer anymore?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks. One last question, Fil Amam here, please.
My name is Hitham Al-Yaqubi from Ahli Bank. My question about the awareness of fourth industrial revolution. I remember in early 80s, 90s, I can say, when the internet came, so many companies adapt or adopt the internet. Why? Because it became a trend for these companies. So all companies try to adapt this new thing. Then these companies face a problem with this technology, and some of the companies disappear from the market. So is there awareness here in the national level for the government, businesses, and also for individual in order to adopt and embrace this technology? The second question is that in order to adapt the technology of fourth industrial revolution, is there any, you can say, a legal framework or a legal ground for this one, or a set of comprehensive rules and regulation in order to adapt that? Why? Because I'm coming from banking industry, and I know if the bank in Oman try to adapt blockchain, for example, so it is not allowable by the existing rules and regulation. Why? Because the blockchain requires the bank to integrate the system with different banks in the global. So with the existing rules and regulation, we cannot adapt the blockchain. So is there any initiative to change the rules, regulation in order to adapt the technology of fourth industrial revolution?
Shukran, shukran. Right, so let me just quickly summarize, and you pick, except for you, Dr. Abdullah, you have your work cut out for you. So obviously we had policy concerns, and I'll bring the last one as well in there. Really, do we have a framework? You talked about governance, but governing, we understand, and we have the innovation strategy, which you were part of at the time when you were in the TRC as well. And that kind of set the guidelines for Oman's strategic direction in there. But do we have a policy? What kind of policies are required and frameworks to enable this? We go back to skills again. If we were to train ourselves today as individuals in our own companies, you know, Gopal included, what are you going to, your employees, what are you going to do with them? How do you train them? Especially those who are directly involved in adapting and adopting to these technologies. There's concern for vocational type jobs. We mentioned that some of the job losses will happen in the less skilled. Is that a risk? You know, and is it a different story? We're looking at long-term versus myopic vision of current problems and challenges with job seekers. And then we obviously have the issue of government, you know, and other entities, even businesses, working in silos and not sharing and not creating some of the sort of complementarities that you spoke about. Is education the solution? Are we blaming education too much and forgetting that there are positive stories that we're ignoring? Again, awareness at the social level. We've seen initiatives of smart cities and other things that focus very specific applications of the fourth industrial revolution. So we'll start with you, Dr. Abdullah.
I'm very impressed to see the level of questions. They really, they are reflecting that what we've been talking about. It really hits high in the strategic thinking of the audience, which is very important. Now, if we try to address these questions, and I'll be very straightforward in answering your questions, so you can capitalize on what we think with respect to the responses of each question. Talking about policy making has been always tough. It's been always complicated. I know I spent about 5 years developing policies. And if you tell me what was implemented out of that, I can tell you 5%, 10%. So now, even all other countries, the biggest problem is not to develop a policy, but to implement the policies. And this is where things are getting diluted all the way down, and then you will have an overlapping of mandate between different organizations. And now, that will never help you to materialize anything. You will end up after 5 years, 10 years in the same level. I think I can share with you something very interesting. At IIC, when we were asked to be established, you know, we refused to say we are a national innovation center because it can guarantee you we'll not do innovation. And then we decided to become absolutely very specific to be industrial innovation center. Now, whoever comes to our door, he's not into industrial, we shake hands, we offer tea and coffee, we advise them where to go, and we tell them as-salam. So we are doing this, and we, you know, it's really saving us 70% of the headache that we are not responsible about. So now, focusing, being very specific is very important. When you come to talk about ICT, I attended one sessions. It was about how do we utilize ICT for science, technology, and innovation. And I was wondering, why did they allocate 3 days? And they brought expertise from all over the world. And at the time, I came to appreciate that ICT, it can be directed and oriented to serve a very, very specific line of impact. So now, ICT can fully dedicated just to understand and make impact at social level. So now if you try to do everything, you'll not be able to do that. So you need to be very clear in your objective, you need to qualify your people, and you need to stay focused. There is a lot is going on, but you'll never be able to do everything.
Absolutely.
Now, the good answer with that one, at Industrial Innovation Center, we spent 1 year to orient 6 graduates to become industrial innovation specialists in fisheries and marble. And after 1 year, they are just becoming now specialists. So now we need to qualify them over the next 5, 6, 7 years to become expertise. And then they become now the expertise for the nation. But now just imagine 1 year, full time, they're only getting training. And we send them to different countries in the world. So now that kind of thing, we need to capitalize on that kind of training. But here what we do in Oman, we train people for 1 day about IP, they disappear. And then we train people about something else, and then they disappear. And it goes on and on and on.
So, thank you very much for those thoughts, Dr. Abdullah. Gopal, what are your thoughts on some of the questions and issues raised?
Yeah, I have a fundamental belief that any change has to be driven by a motivation. And what is the motivation? Especially when you talk in the context of industry, it's profits. Private sector, the more the government moves away from business and leaves it to private sector, the better it is. Because private sector would, in its own interest, like to adopt quickly. Because if you don't adopt, you perish. It's as simple as that. So expecting everything from the government, first of all, it's to my belief, is the wrong way to go about it. Government should be an enabler, but not a doer. So I don't think we need to look at policies for everything. As to the example that you gave of ministries where still papers move from one desk to the other, I guess the answer is very simple, because they have employed too many people. So you've got to generate jobs. So it's going the other way around over there. But when we talk of fourth IR and industry, I think the companies on their own, because if you don't adopt, you will perish and you will close down, and somebody else who is better than you will come about. It's a natural process of evolution. There's no way you can speed up things. It has to occur. And my belief is, in Oman, it will occur much faster than many other companies, simply because the Omani industry is dependent on international markets. It's not dependent on domestic markets. So when you're in the international markets, you've got to be competitive. It will happen. Now, talking of skilling and training and education, again, my belief is that everything doesn't have to be done at the highest levels. You don't have to produce more PhDs and masters. Okay. You've got to concentrate at the lower level. We need to look at the school education, because today the maximum number of people out for employment are high school graduates. They are the largest number. So what skill sets do they come with? Nothing. So we need to look at that area more importantly, rather than, I mean, Sultan Qaboos University will definitely produce a lot of engineers, and they are good and they get absorbed. But what do we do with the hundreds of thousands of school graduates? So that's an area we need to focus upon. That is one part of the whole story. Other part is the industry will have to do its own training. Every company has to have its own training. You are asking me about our adaptation. What we do every time we bring in a new technology, we have an in-house training center. And the first thing we do is we put our people through training before we allow them to touch the equipment. So that is the way it has to be done. No government cannot help you, and independent training center cannot help you on that. So because the diversity of technologies across the industry is so much that it has to be done individually. And they will do it. We will do it. Why? I mean, it's not because of any social obligation or social motive. I would be honest with you. The reason why we do it, because we want more out of our employees. We want better return on investment. We want to make more profits. Ultimately, that should be the only driver which will force you to adopt.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Gopal. Dr. Nadia, your thoughts?
Thank you very much for that question, because it's music to my ears. You're talking about paper being used in many of our organizations, and but I think the fourth industrial revolution could really help in that way, because it's digitally connected and things will be changing. We are seeing changes in the government. Royal Oman Police, I was able to renew my passport in 30 minutes, which is fantastic. And I think other government institutions now see the value in that and will be catching on. In fact, that is solving the problem of biodiversity, where paper is coming from plants. So again, a way to use technology to help in environment. I apologize, I'll have to disagree with Mr. Gopal a little bit on terms of letting industry only adapt to the fourth industrial revolution, because we also have to think of the consequences of development at all costs. It's not about development at all costs, but sustainable development. Absolutely. Making sure that the resources are available in the future, making sure that we're not impacting our environment, because without a healthy environment, we are not going to enjoy those prosperity that we're looking at. So we really have to balance it. And the government, sometimes we tend to blame the government a little bit, but they have to see the big picture. They have to deal on a global market. They have to deal with global issues and look at it at that point of view. And that's why we see some things are slow in taking forward. But definitely there are certain industries that are picking it up and running with it. Change will not happen overnight. Definitely awareness is important. We need to involve the society. We need to have conversation, dialogue. Look, what are the risks? How is it going to affect my job? And I think platforms like the Inside Stories is a wonderful start to get people talking about this topic, and also about skills. When you talk about skills are changing, Markets are being disrupted. Our processes are being disrupted in terms of the skills. A farmer before would wait for the extension officer to come and tell them what is the problem in the farm. Today they use Google and they can find out what is happening, the climate changing. Absolutely. Can I go to the sea or not go fishing and so on. So a lot of things are happening. Our skills are changing. But I think if I were to say, in our field, we're changing to more data-oriented skills.
Absolutely.
So
I did not mean at any point in time that industry should operate without boundaries. Yes, environmental protection is required. It is the job of the government to make sure that environment is well taken care of. There has to be ethical policies. Definitely, you cannot be unethical. Therefore, labor laws are required not to ensure that the people are taken care of. So, when I said profit is the motive for adaptation.
Absolutely.
That's what I meant.
Which we love to hear when people disagree, right? It makes a conversation.
It's not a disagreement.
Final remarks from Engineer Lan.
First of all, I will tap in your question regarding the changing the mindset of your team. I'll just bring in a personal experience. When I established Gulf Energy in 2007, 2009, we had so much of papers that hold our growth plans. We had so much of money stuck because the paper was not complete. We had so many operations are not done in an efficient way because they are so what I have done, I created Gears. And Gears is a software, an ERP software, where it has touched all aspects of our business and closed all the gaps. And actually, Gears is the abbreviation of Gulf Energy Accounting and Reporting Software, which is today is a full-fledged ERP software used by the industry here in Oman, and it is homegrown. So technically saying is the need is the mother of invention. This is one thing. So creating a small projects lead to have a huge impact. This is one thing. Second thing, to change the mindset, well, maybe you can invite them for a science fiction movie, you know, to see what is the aspect and the bandwidth of what technology can do. Today, when you talk about the skills and where we are as a country going forward with the regard of fourth industrial revolution, it took, Dr. Abdullah said it took him 1 year to make him a specialist, and it would take him 7 years to make him an expert. In 8 years, possibly by that time he reached there are already people on Mars and in Saturn, or I don't know, or even in what they call the moon in the Saturn.
Was it the Jupiter moon?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, today the WhatsApp was made by a Russian, inventor. Elon Musk, he came from Australia to US. So technically saying, getting the expertise from outside into the country is not a bad idea at all. Actually, we should encourage that. Today, we have, you mentioned about the Amal al-Wafda. Today, we have so many of the 1.8 million. It doesn't help if we have 10 inventors in the country which are going to make maybe the new version of Facebook or the new version of that and encourage this kind of thing. So that's where we need, and with that, today, do you think 50,000 of Dubai population made for Dubai today? No. There's so much invention. Last week I was in Dubai and I went to the Emirates Towers, and in the basement, actually in the shopping mall where it's attached to it, there is a startup club made by Mubashir al-Maktoum. There are so many of them in Oman now. In Com, we have one. In the Markaz al-Ibtikar,
we have 4 of them there.
We have 4 of them here in Oman. So we need to advertise this. We need to encourage people. We need to make sure that people, they go there, and we need to, as well as I say, we need to see what the other world is happening. And we need to invite people to come here to showcase what they are achieved and what they have achieved, and to help, and as well to encourage our young entrepreneurs, young engineers. It doesn't, see, when we talk about fourth industrial revolution, it doesn't mean only engineers and scientists. You know, it can be artists. Today there is more than, I don't know, trillion that people spend on movies, and just watching movies, and it's all about art and creating scenarios and creating whatever.
Absolutely.
So it's actually, it touches all aspects of our life. There is no limitation. It's always a good idea to look to see what the world is doing and learn from it, and as well importing it and work with it and have it a standpoint. When we started Gulf Energy, it was the first initiative. I worked for an international company called Schlumberger, and I found it's the time for us to start an Omani company, and that was 2003. At that time, none of this initiative was there. And we struggled in the beginning, but today the company is listed in NASDAQ. It's the first company in the Middle East, from Middle East, listed in NASDAQ, and it's an Omani company. Who has done it? 95% of the management team are Omani, with 85% Omanization at the skills and unskilled labor. So technically saying, we can do it if you want to do it. If there is a will, there is a way. And today there's no limitation. Thanks to Uncle Google, by a click, you can find whatever you want.
Absolutely. Engineer, thanks very much for those thoughts as well. By the way, those who will catch Engineer outside should ask him about fishing in oil wells as well. That's an interesting story he has. I would like to bring this session to a close with a few remarks that we've heard today. I think when we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, there are a lot of misconceptions. Some are grand and some are misperceived, perhaps, but it was very clear that it needs some visionary leadership. We find that a lot of myths about job destruction and job creation are misunderstood, which obviously we've seen questions about today. But technology is the main driver of this fourth industrial revolution, data and availability of data, and the cost determines how fast you can adopt these technologies, create them and invent in them. But regulation and frameworks might be very useful in safeguarding against the negative outcomes and creating sustainable use of these technologies and how might they affect our lives. But partnerships are part of that story, and we cannot ignore that smaller businesses partner with bigger businesses, and businesses partner with government and civil society and professional society as well to improve outcomes and better understand what is going on. But all of this depends really whether society is well aware, whether the talent is available to us wherever it is in the globe, as mentioned here, is to be shared, the knowledge is to be shared. And knowledge, in economic terms, does not have any diminishing returns, means you can use it over and over again and improve on it. And I think that is the key message here, that knowledge drives this whole process. And if we can create knowledge, adapt it and use it, bihawlillah, we can reap the benefits in manufacturing, in developing better exports, and connecting ourselves into the world value chain. Having said that, I would like to thank our panelists for their thoughts and their experiences, and having to keep up with some of our nuisances here. I would like to thank the audience for being here today and some of the engaging questions. And I hope that we leave you with a thought of how you might change the way you do things and how you might find innovative ways of improving your own processes in whichever area of your life, professionally or personally for that matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Highness, and I would like to thank our panel and thank everyone for being here today. If you're interested, our next session, Inside Stories, is in April. You can register now. Thank you very much. And as His Highness said, there is an opportunity for networking now. So you can stay and network and talk to the panel and the speakers. Thank you very much. شكرا جزيل الشكر والتقدير على حضوركم اليوم. في فرصة انكم تلتقوا في المتحدثين بإذن الله. شكرا، وأمسيتنا القادمة بتكون في أبريل بإذن الله، فإذا حابين ممكن التسجيل من خلال الرابط. شكرا جزيلا.